Welcome everybody to another Purpose Served podcast episode. Man, I gotta cut the time down. This is gonna start off right away, but it kinda there's like a 10-second delay. That don't even matter. If y'all new to this Purpose Served podcast, I'm your legendary host, Darryl Wingfield. This podcast is simply about inspiring you guys to be the best version of yourselves that you could possibly be. And to innovate and improve the human experience. Man. Wow. Wow. You gotta just love life. Life is just crazy. It's insane. Life is deep. And it's a beautiful thing to get to explore that every single day. With small interactions. That's what I'm coming to recognize at this point in my life. How important the small interactions actually are. They're very important. We're going to be tackling some deep questions today. I've been thinking about them as like crazy as of late. What's been making me think about this is constantly hearing the problems that people go through. The problems that people go through is them having an extremely challenging time being themselves. People are repressing their feelings, and people are repressing their thoughts, and they're being a shell of themselves to please other people and not look a certain way until an episode happens and they blow up. So the question that we're going to tackle, one of the many questions, but I'm going to pop this off by asking the question, does outer events and things lead to eternal life? I'm going to ask that question again for the people in the back. Does outer events and things lead to eternal life? Why do I ask that question? I ask that question is because people live for outer events and things, and it leads them to a dead end. Shout out to a friend of mine, Z. We had a conversation earlier today, and it was a very interesting conversation. And the conversation was talking about purpose in life and finding your niche. And what if you don't come across that thing that you want to do for the rest of your life? One thing that I brought up within this conversation is the fact that, even before I get to that, it was even along the lines of living for money and acquiring wealth and stuff like that. People who think their purpose is going to be associated with that, which it is, not even going to lie, but it shouldn't be the focus. It should not be the focus at all. That's a part of those outer things and outer events, which is already dead. I read a lot of Carl Jung stuff, and it's very profound. And that's the one thing in the beginning of the Red Book that he was talking about when he was on the way of what is to come, to refine his soul. And one thing that he put in there, and I'm paraphrasing, is that when you live for outer events and things, you're living a dead system. And essentially speaking, it's things that already happened and is done with. And you should live and carry out the meaning that brings life to outer events and things, which is internal. We've been talking about that like crazy as of late. We've always been talking about that here. The difference between living outside of yourself and living within yourself. But outer events and things will lead you to a dead end. Outer events and things will lead you to chasing stuff that you will never be able to catch and you will never be able to grasp. And even if you do catch those things and you do grasp them, they're smoke and mirrors. And anything outside of yourself is nothing like it seems on the surface. And those outside things is fulfilling something that's temporary, that's within you. But it's still a void that has to get filled. And the only way to get rid of a void is you have to replace that void with light. Because void is essentially darkness. It's a nothingness. And you have to replace that void with something. And outside things and events won't replace that for you. And it won't get you eternal life, which a lot of people are looking for. People are looking desperately for their niche. People are looking desperately for their purpose. And people are looking desperately for the meaning in life, to their life in particular. And I tell you what, we spoke on this before, but you looking to other people and other things as an example, it won't help you out with that. It won't help you find your niche. And it won't help you find your purpose. All of that stuff is smoke and mirrors. Look to yourself for the answers, because it's within you. It truly is. And there's trust that must be at play. There's faith that must be at play when you going on that journey. Because you only recognize that outer events, you only recognize that darkness is because it originated from inside of you first. That darkness originated inside of you first. That's why you can't find the light within the relationships you have and the degree that you have that led you to acquire debt. And the job that you have that you no longer want to work anymore. In the house that you're probably living in, or the house or place that you're aspiring to have. You're chasing smoke and mirrors. And you have to turn around. I highly encourage you guys to turn around and look the other way. Stop looking outside of yourself. You're only going to cause further darkness, because you have to look and see where the darkness originated from. And don't blame anybody else for your darkness. Take responsibility and accountability for the darkness that you have. So this leads to the next question. So if outer events and things don't lead to eternal life, does inner life lead to eternal life? Does that lead to it? You're getting closer. By reversing the lens and looking inside of yourself, you are getting closer to finding that truth. My journey with dealing with all of this and dealing with myself, embracing myself, it ran its course when I tried to look outside of myself and live it through outer events and things. And I knew that was going to lead me to eternal life. I didn't even know that eternal life was something that I was looking for. And then I turned around and I looked towards myself. I looked towards myself when my world was crashing and burning all around me, all across the board. When it was crashing and burning all around me. While doing that, I knew that was the direction that I had to go in. I had to go inside of myself and figure out what was really going on. I had to go inside of myself and look at what was causing me all of this deep pain that seemed like it wasn't going anywhere. And in fact, it was just getting worse the more I kept trying at accomplishing things. It just wasn't helping. It wasn't helping. And even though for a long time now, I've been a spiritual man, even though for pretty much my whole entire life, I've been a Christian and a follower of Christ, I still was going through hell. I still was. I still had a lot of bitterness in my heart. I still had a lot of anger in my heart towards the people around me, even including my family, even including towards my parents, if we want to get real. And all of that stuff was weighing me down. And eventually, like I said, all of this stuff, it led me like inwardly. And just because you live in life from inside of yourself, that also doesn't mean that it's going to lead you to eternal life. But even though in the same breath, it's getting you much closer to that center point and that the goal, the real goal, that hidden treasure is getting you closer. Be patient. Please be patient. And you have to be honest with yourself once you reverse the lens and you go inside of yourself and you really, really start looking. And you really start looking. And start recognizing that darkness within yourself. You can see a therapist and talk this out and all of that. You can be prescribed medication to try to block out the problems that you're dealing with and the disorders that you have, quote unquote, and the disabilities that you have. Yet again, I gotta repeat, I'm not a medical professional, so take what I say with a grain of salt. But please, people, don't let those demons inside of you take a hold of your life and control your life and dictate the journey that you are going on. Brace yourself. Don't brace your thoughts and don't brace your emotions. Some of the things that we talked about on our conversation earlier was, you know how FOMO, fear of missing out, and you looking at people on social media and you watching their stories, and it's like, man, they're making time for other people. How come people don't make time for me? That's happening. Good. When you are watching other people's success and you're feeling unsuccessful yourself, good. If you are feeling lonely through watching other people live their life, then good. There's something internally that you're dealing with. And by feeling those things and thinking those things, it's a great time to start observing yourself while going through that and seeing what your triggers actually are. And thoughts are so subtle, and feelings are so subtle, and they're extremely clever. And you have to oppose that cleverness with being simple-minded towards those things. You don't know what other people's inner life is like to make them express themselves in the way that they do. But a way to really get to know that part is you have to understand what you're going through first and foremost, and not take any thought towards what somebody else is going through. That sounds so selfish, don't it? Don't worry about other people else, like anybody else and what they got going through or what they got going on. Because oftentimes when you're looking at other people in that sort of way, you're looking at them in a very selfish way. And you want them to behave like your little puppet, and you want them to behave in a way that you want them to behave like, and do what you want them to do and say the things that you want them to say. And if they don't do that, that's going to determine your thoughts, and that's going to determine the mood that you're in. That's you living outside of yourself. And then inwardly, in your inner life, these are the thoughts that's happening inside of you that you are identifying with, that's making you feel less of yourself, and that's developing the soul sickness even more, and having the passions growing you even more. Don't identify with any of those things. Don't look at other people's life as if it's better than yours or worse than yours. Don't judge anybody. And the one thing that I say on here all the time, you have to forgive every single person that ever wronged you in your whole entire life, for you to get clarity inside of yourself, and for God to really, really shine his light upon you and the things that you're going through internally. And then you'll be able to see clearly what's going on outside of you. You will. Promise. But you have to align with the spirit of truth. You have to. You don't really got much of a choice. You do, actually. I gotta stop saying you don't have much of a choice. You do have a choice. You 100% have a choice. You could choose to align with the evil that's happening in the world, or you can choose to align with the good that's happening in the world. There's both going on right now. It's just like a lot of darkness because people don't see the light and they're blind. And people don't want to hear the truth because they're deaf. But due to the fact that they're deaf to the truth, that means they have open ears to lies. And due to the fact they're blind to the light, that means that their eyes is open to darkness. This is why people are overly distracted right now. This is why people, a lot of the stuff, even that what I'm talking about right now, is foreign to people. And they don't get it because they haven't spent enough time with themselves. And even in the spiritual lens and spiritual life, you can reverse the lens, and your inner life also can block you from living that eternal life, or getting to that point of the eternal life. Because your spiritual life and the things that you've bought into spiritually is tainting your spirit, which is happening also to a decent amount of people. Be simple in the way that you conduct yourself. Let your yes be yes and let your no's be no's. Point people towards the truth because you started with yourself first. And you can seek out knowledge and stuff like that and read books and listen to other people talk and learn from other people, but experience these things for yourself instead of it being knowledge. Act on these things. Seriously act on these things and put them into practice for yourself. And it's going to be challenging at first. And you will be going through it at first. But eventually the right rod will get smoother. It will. So you're not going to find eternal life, just to bring us back to the point. You're not going to find eternal life in outside events and outer things. And you also not going to find eternal life in your inner life if you're lying to yourself. You have to live your inner life from the standpoint of truth and do the best that you can to align your truth with the truth of God. Align yourself with the truth of God. And be Christ-like. Be willing to sacrifice yourself for the greater good. Be selfless. And you have to endure all the inner pain that you're going through and overcome the lies of your own thoughts and your own feelings. Like, you have to. And you do that by separating yourself first and foremost from your thoughts and your feelings. And know that those aren't you. And you're not it. And figure out who you yourself is that's outside of those thoughts and outside of those things. The one thing also that I want to point out in a red book that was very, very interesting, in this part of the book, Carl Jung was doing psychological experiments with himself about his inner life and what was going on. And one of the inner figures that popped up that he was talking to was Elijah. Elijah the prophet from the Bible. Another one was Salome, who was daughter of one of like the queens or something during the time that Jesus walked the earth, and she was responsible for John the Baptist getting his head chopped off because of a dance that she performed for King Herod. And he was if he was impressed by the dance, he was going to grant her a request for anything that she asked for. And she asked for John the Baptist's head on a plate because of her mother. And he was impressed by her dance, and that's what she asked for. And he was terrified to do it, but living for outer events and things outside of himself, he granted that request. And John the Baptist's head was given to Salome's mother. Isn't that insane? That's crazy. That now, going back to Carl Jung in the Red Book, the one thing that was pointed out is that he was talking to this inner figure of Elijah, and the conversation was pertaining to being able to distinguish what's real and what's symbolic. And you have to live a balanced and whole life, essentially speaking. And in fact, I actually want to find the passage and read it to you guys instead of doing all of this like paraphrasing and stuff like that. This book is ginormous. Look at this. Insane. Yeah, for those you guys that's like listening and stuff like that, this book is like high key, this like the size of my freaking torso or something like that. But give me some time, and I will find it. I will find it. But in the meantime, in the meantime of me finding it, I hope you guys been doing pretty good for yourselves. Let's see. There was something in this when he was talking about separating yourself from thoughts and not confusing yourself with things in the inside of your life, just like you wouldn't confuse yourself for like a tree or a bird outside of you. I'm gonna find it for sure. Okay, I found it. I apologize for the awkward silence. I apologize. But this is the conversation that he had with the inner figure Elijah within himself. This is his inner life that he's living right now. Carl Jung. Elijah says, "Are you anxious? Your ignorance is to blame for your bad conscience. Not knowing is guilt, but you believe that it is the urge toward forbidden knowledge that causes your feeling of guilt. Why do you think you are here?" Jung's eye says, "I don't know. I sank into this place when unknowingly I tried resisting the not known. So here I am, astonished and confused, an ignorant fool. I experienced strange things in your house, things that frighten me and whose meaning is dark to me." Elijah says, "If it were not your law to be here, how would you be here?" Jung's eye says, I'm afflicted by fatal weakness, my father." Elijah says to him, "You are evasive. You cannot extricate yourself from your law." Jung's eye says, "How can I extricate myself from what is unknown to me, which I cannot reach with either feeling or presentiment?" Elijah says, "You are lying. Do you not know that you yourself recognize what it means if Salome loves you?" Jung's eye says, "You are right. A doubtful and uncertain thought arose in me, but I have forgotten it again." Elijah says to him, "You have not forgotten it. It burnt deep inside you. Are you cowardly? Or can you not differentiate this thought from your own self enough so that you wish to claim it for yourself?" Jung's eye says, "The thought went too far for me, and I shun far-fetched ideas. They are dangerous, since I am a man, and you know how much men are accustomed to seeing thoughts as their own, so that they eventually confuse them with themselves." Elijah says to him, "Will you therefore confuse yourself with a tree or an animal because you look at them and because you exist with them in one and the same world? Must you be your thoughts because you are in the world of your thoughts? But your thoughts are just as much outside of yourself as trees and animals are outside of your body." Jung's eye says, "I understand. My thought world was for me more word than world. I thought of my thought world. It is I." Elijah says to him, "Do you say to your human world and everything being outside of you, you are I?" And this is the last thing that pretty much Jung says. His eye: "I stepped into your house, my father, with the fear of a schoolboy, but you taught me solitary wisdom. I can also consider my thoughts as being outside of myself. That helps me to return to that terrible conclusion that my tongue is reluctant to express. I thought that Salome loves me because I resemble John or you. This thought seemed unbelievable to me. That's why I rejected it and thought that she loves me because I am really quite opposite to you. That she loves her badness and my badness. This thought was devastating." So replay that dialogue back, or I recommend you guys getting a red book for yourselves. It's a very, very profound book, if you ask me. But the figure of Elijah within him says that, do you confuse trees and animals in your outside world as if it's you? And when you thinking about your thoughts, do you confuse your thoughts with those same things being you instead of being outside of you? Like I said, a lot of people have a hard time understanding that they are not their thoughts and that they are not their feelings. Those are things outside of them. And the one thing, my goal is a primary simple one. And I want to point you guys back to yourselves so you can get to see yourself and not what you think you are and not how you feel that you are. So you're going to get pointed back to a singularity point. You got to trace things back to the singularity. 3 other questions that I would like to present as we draw this podcast episode down to a close is, where do we come from? What are we and where are we going? This comes from a painting by a guy named Paul Guiguen, I think that's his name. And those are very, very profound questions that I presented a couple of podcasts ago, but you got to think about the origin nature of who we are as humanity. And you hold all of humanity's history and works within you as an individual. You hold all of it. You hold it all. It's contained within you. Get to know yourself and you're going to unlock something that's extremely special that's inside you, guaranteed. That will help you change your life completely, but that's also going to change the world around you completely. And that meaning will be found there. And it's not going to be found in outer events and things that's already been lived. You're not going to get nothing out of it. And that's also how you break cycles as well. Align with the spirit of truth. Align with the spirit of God. And be an example of the Son of God. Yet again, it's going to lead you to self-sacrifice. And once you commit it to the path and you sacrifice your old self, that's not really who you are, you're going to get to your true self. And you're going to understand your true self thoughts. You're going to understand the true self feelings. And it's going to make you carry out your life in a completely different way. That's very harmonious. And that was something that you've been always destined to live and that you've been always destined to be. But it's contained within you, deep down inside. You're just going to have to travail and go through the darkness. And you're going to have a guiding force of light that's going to light every step of your way. Guaranteed. Guaranteed. And then when you're going through this process, you will be walking in the light of your purpose and you're going to be aligned. And nothing anybody that what they do or nothing that they say is going to affect you from this path, because you'll know truly that you don't have any other choice but to walk this walk. There's nothing left for you. There's nothing to lean back on, and there's nobody to fall back on. Nothing. And by doing that, you're going to gain everything. You will gain everything. That's all I have for y'all today. Until next time, I think we're going to really be talking about the monad, that single unit. It's going to be a deep dive. I've just been free flowing and talking these last couple of podcast episodes, but we're going to really be breaking stuff down from here on out, guaranteed, instead of me freestyling these episodes, which I'm liking. I really am. But serve your purpose, honor the 2 greatest commandments, and you guys will be just fine. I'm out of here. Last but not least, deuces.